Sıkıyor seni. Sıkı yönetim abi. Kapat!
Cumhurbaşkanı ve hükümet yetkilileri tarafından temel hak ve hürriyetler zedelenmiş, kuvvetler ayrılığına dayalı laik ve demokratik hukuk düzeni fiilen ortadan kaldırılmıştır. Anayasal düzeni yeniden tesis etmek maksadıyla yönetime el koymuştu.
On July 15, 2016, Turkey witnessed a dramatic coup attempt. Once again, tanks were on the streets to intervene the already wounded democracy of the country. Turkey had experienced military interventions before, and all were successful. This time, however, it was poorly organized, and unlike previous coups, people took to the streets against it. President Erdogan's call onto the streets had created a public resistance. In a couple of hours, it became clear that the coup had failed, claiming the lives of 247 people. The coup had not come out of blue. In the course of last couple of years, Turkish democracy was tensing up, and for many international observers, the country was spiraling down the authoritarianism. The charismatic leader of the governing Justice and Development Party, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, was increasing his grip on power and pressing harder against civic and political criticism. As of 2016, Turkey had become the biggest jailer of journalists. So, what had pushed a once reformist leader down the authoritarianism? Coming from Islamist roots, Erdogan had redefined himself as a reformist and promised to leave the days of political Islam behind. Moving towards center-right through populism, he was elected 3 consecutive times as prime minister. After the third victory in 2011, he had by far become the strongest man in the country, and then started reasserting Islamist politics. While politics was turning into a one-man show, the opposition started to become more vocal and intense. In the summer of 2013, the youth started getting together to protect Istanbul's Gezi Park against an urban development plan that would wipe out the last remaining green spot in downtown Istanbul. The protests were extremely peaceful, that the police brutality which came on early third day shocked the whole country. People started losing their lives under the rain of tear gas, and eventually the protests spread throughout the country. People, it seems, wanted to have a voice after all. While the protests were losing momentum, another shock hit the society. On December 17, 2013, came the largest corruption investigation of modern Turkish history. A prominent journalist, Can Dündar, would call this historic day as the longest day of Erdogan. The residences of the sons of 3 cabinet members were raided by the police early in the morning. Millions of dollars were found under the allegations of corruption. A young Iranian businessman, Reza Zarrab, was also detained with the charges of bribing 4 ministers and their family members. Erdogan's government was shaken at its roots. As expected, he did not resign or renew the elections, but did something rather opposite. His exit strategy targeted the legitimacy of the investigation that in fact was a judicial coup attempt against his government, and the Gülenists were behind it. the bureaucratic arm of the global Gülen movement, had masterminded the investigations, Erdogan said. His counterattack came in the education field, where the Gülenists were well established. Erdogan banned the college prep courses, around 1,000 of which were run by the Gülen movement. These courses were extremely important for the movement to reach out to youth and exert its influence. The tension between the Gülen movement and Erdogan had turned into an all-out war. Then came another shock. A prosecutor in the southern part of Turkey had stopped some trucks which were allegedly carrying weapons and ammunition for al-Nusra. The allegations had that more than 2,000 trucks had passed the border carrying weapons. Can Dündar again exposed them on the newspaper that he ran as editor-in-chief, then was targeted by Erdogan openly and publicly. The increasing authoritarianism had energized the opposition, which had become vocal through mass communication. But there was a solution to that too. The Gülenist media, the most organized opposition to Erdogan, would be at the center of his crackdown. The dailies, TV channels, radio stations, websites, all were shut down, including the highest circulating paper of the country. Erdogan was determined to silence the Gülenists for good, and he seemed to be successful in doing so. Losing the conventional media, the opposition resorted to social media. Then Erdogan attacked them. YouTube and Twitter were totally shut down for about 2 months. Later, they were reopened, but have never been free. Turkey was accelerating down the path of authoritarianism. After all that process, the Gülenists and their leader, Fethullah Gülen, who lives in Pennsylvania, were fully antagonized by Erdogan, and when the coup came, the public opinion was ready to believe that it was Gülenists behind the coup. Erdogan was certain that the coup was plotted by Gülenists and Western countries, specifically the United States. Having never been transparent enough, the Gülenists had lost their credibility in a short while. Gülen had lost his persuasion in Turkey, where Erdogan's oppression had already become the only game in town. The Gülenists were caught in defense and voiceless. Despite not being the primary target of Erdogan's state of emergency, Kurds got their traditional share of oppression. Locally declared martial law before the coup in predominantly Kurdish zones had made life unbearable. After the coup, Erdogan's legal arm reached out to leading figures of pro-Kurdish People's Democracy Party and arrested most of them. The co-chairman Selahattin Demirtas and co-chairwoman Figen Yüksekdag were among them. Many questions go unanswered about this rather curious coup. 160 generals out of 350 in total of the Turkish army, 75 governors out of 81, and the police chiefs of every single city were Gülenists, according to Erdogan. If it is correct, then what is his responsibility, since it was his government who appointed these people? And again, if it is correct, then how come the coup failed? The American top soldier Joseph Votel and Chief Intelligence Officer James Clapper both said, "Many of our interlocutors have been purged or arrested," implying that America's friends were arrested. The German intelligence chief Bruno Kahl took the matter further, and after 8 months from the coup, he said, "Erdogan wanted to convince us in various ways that Gülen was behind the coup, but we aren't convinced. The coup, it seems, was only a pretext for Erdogan to do his massive purge." Kahl also denied the claim that Gülen movement was an extremist organization and defined it as a civic movement of education. So, was the Turkish coup a joint task by Putin and Erdogan through which Russia would push the West out of Turkey and Erdogan would get rid of his arch-enemy? A leading figure in the coup, Mehmet Disli, was the brother of AKP's vice chairman. Disli was a lieutenant general in the Turkish army, and it was him who gave orders to bomb the parliament. Curiously enough, the bombing happened after it became clear that the coup had already failed. What was the general trying to do other than provoking people to the streets? Who plotted against Erdogan really, assuming that it was a real coup attempt? Tens of thousands of housewives, doctors, academics, school teachers, engineers, and other civil servants, more than 100,000 of whom were fired fast after the coup. Perhaps they were not involved in the attempted coup. Then again, Erdogan had a firm opinion about them. The witch hunt had started long time ago, but it reached a whole new level after the coup attempt. More than 100,000 people lost their jobs. Tens of thousands of them were arrested. Could they really be the plotters of the coup? Is it even possible to organize a military coup like that? The coup attempt, if it was real, had played into the hands of Mr. Erdogan. Two people benefited from the coup: President Erdogan and a shadowy pro-Russia figure, Dogu Perinçek. Perhaps we will know much better about this rather clumsy and curious coup attempt. There is now a more pressing issue. The witch hunt that President Erdogan launched in the aftermath of the coup destroyed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. A mass tragedy is going on. Through a mass profiling by National Intelligence Agency, hundreds of thousands of people who sympathize Fethullah Gülen were identified. Now, they are being crushed by the legal arm of President Erdogan. We will punish those Gülenists so hard that I swear to you that they will rot in prison cells and pray to God that they had long been dead. The stories of those who have been arrested en masse without evidence, and those who have been waiting for their trial for months, and those who have been tortured, and those who committed suicide have yet to be written. And it has yet to be known what has been more dramatic, the hideous yet clumsy coup attempt, or the mass purge of President Erdogan in its aftermath.